Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and we have a couple of really enlightening things to look at. What's this show? This show is where we look at what people are talking about on the internet, and then we say what you can do about it if you are so inclined as to change the course of things. But more and more, this show has been about reporting your successes, because the good guys on planet Earth are just racking up victory after victory after victory. I thought it'd be useful today to just have a look at some of the cultural things that are changing, to just take a step back, look at some of the things we've been talking about, and discuss how they are being viewed differently as opposed to how they would have been viewed 10 years ago. Because everything we're talking about today has been going on in some form or another for a very long time. And what has changed is how people react to it, the culture of planet Earth on 2023. And it's just a relief to see. How y'all doing tonight? Wicked Foxy Dragon, great to see you. Andrew Then, hello. Andrew Wasnicki, good evening, sir. Rustbox, hello. Delighted to see y'all. Man, oh man. Well, let's dive right into it. What do you say? Imagine for a moment that I did the intro and outro screen right then. Yeah, all right, there it is. Let's do it. So one of the big changes that's happened in the last, really over the last year, is that we have become more frank about who the kitty diddlers are in our society. Drag queens have been accused of this. They've been accused of being sexually perverted in some way. It's exactly the way homosexuals were treated. That's just evolved to being a more specific group within the LGBTQIA plus community. And look, don't let anybody say that your old pal Jake isn't fair. Here's a fair criticism of that community. We gotta shorten it. Too many letters. Need a shorter phrase for that. Or not to go with an acronym. But yeah, everybody that is not pretending to be a Christian heterosexual is often treated as though they're a danger of some kind. Well, because of that treatment, because of that unfair set of accusations against human beings, there have been communities around the internet that have sprouted up just to point out, hey, usually not a drag queen. For example, this Reddit community called r/not a drag queen. Looky here. This fella is Oklahoma youth pastor and middle school principal Cody Barlow. He's been charged with sexually assaulting multiple students. Yeah, youth pastor. Well, hey, that's just one. Oh, wait a minute. Who's this now? Well, a child advocacy and church volunteer in Virginia has been arrested for, this is by Dara Faye as well, has been arrested for distributing child sexually abusive materials and attempting to sexually abuse an 8-year-old girl. She was caught during an FBI operation trying to meet the agent's daughter to introduce sexual activity to her, to what she thought was an 8-year-old child. Her name is Eleanor Huntoon Hop. Okay. Well, you know what? It's not like there's going to be another slide that I pull up. Of course there is. A Louisiana Catholic school math teacher and coach has been arrested by the Department of Homeland Security for enticing a minor to produce child pornography. He sent a video to a minor, God help us, and it's since been leaked to social media. You can view it below if you go to that post, but I didn't want to. Basically, everybody that I see getting busted for this stuff has online that I see. Rather, let me phrase that again. Basically, everybody that I see online getting busted for this stuff has involvement with the church. Now, does that mean only church-involved people? No, of course not. This is a reaction to the accusations, the unfair accusations leveled against drag queens. I don't think that joining the church suddenly makes you want to be a diddler. But it's undeniable that people who are involved with these things, who are in communities that are shut off from the rest of people, that have a vow of silence of some kind associated with them, they're more likely to be involved in this. What is important about all this, I feel, is not the individual cases. Although we should note that every accusation sure does appear to be a confession with these right-wing psychopaths. But what's most important is that the decent people of the world are fighting back culturally. They're doing the important work of simply pointing out to the internet, to the species, look, you say this is a problem, here's the problem actors. You want to do something about this? Do something about them. Quit harassing this random group. If we were ancient animals, this would be like we keep coming back and seeing destroyed eggs, cracked eggshells, and we turn around looking for the beast that did it and just, I don't know, attacking a random bird in the tree. The wrong bird. And I'm delighted that we are now finally pointing that out. By the way, there is a series of articles by the Daily Kos. That's KOS. Daily KOS. And it's just keeping track of the Republican politicians and political donors that are caught constantly for this. You'll be shocked to find out it ain't Democrats. It is Republican politicians and donors that most commonly do this stuff. So keep your eyes out and share this around when you see it. Every time you see on social media somebody posting something disparaging about homosexuals or drag queens or whatever the hell, share with them that Reddit community, r/notadragqueen. And every single day, the non-drag queens that get busted for doing gross stuff to, at, whatever, children, are put up there. And it's good for people to understand that's the reality. Let's see what y'all have to say. Shannon Kelhoff says you can't have that many letters and keep adding to it and still not create a word for it, right? Damn it. We need something for this. Shannon, you're playing my song. The Michigander Golden Girls stood up for their community in Adams Township. Hell yes. Hope lives. Love to hear it. Oh, it's good to see y'all. Hey, Rustbox. Hello. The anti-corporatist driving. TYT's Mayday went late. It is Mayday, isn't it? That's right. Really should have done a Mayday-themed show today. Hey, workers of the world, unite. Y'all know this. You know what? Let's just do a random Mayday segment. Let's see here. Hopefully I can do this. Yeah. Well, it is May Day, and to that end, I just have a quick announcement. What you should do is prepare for a general strike. If you work for somebody and it is conceivably within your means, I don't mean paying the bills, I mean not losing your job forever, not losing your career forever. If you can strike with your brothers and sisters in a general strike, conceivably, you should prepare for it. Now, there are jobs where you can't do that. For example, if somebody's life, if you're an at-home nurse and somebody's life depends on you doing your job, well, you can't strike because you're not going to be affecting the people you need to affect. There are certain jobs where it's just not conceivable. You might have kids that depend on you bringing in a regular paycheck, and missing even one or two will be devastating. Then you can't strike either. But for every group of 100 people, there's 2 or 3 that can conceivably do it. My request to you on this May Day, if you want your life to improve no matter where you are in the world, okay, let's start with the United States. No matter where you are in the United States, if you want your life to improve and you're not a billionaire, well, the thing to do is to prepare for a general strike. How do you prepare? Well, if you can, set aside money. You got rent or mortgage to pay. We are, of course, constantly enslaved in that manner. You've got heat to keep on, etc. Yeah, set aside some cash if you can. Set aside stocks of food. Ain't a joke. I mean, literally cans of food that aren't going to expire for years. Set aside a food supply. Try to, if it's easier for you, try to prepay some of your bills ahead of time and then simply keep prepaying them ahead of time so that at any given moment you're at least 2 or 3 months ahead on your bills. Why? Well, if the time should come, like for example, if we were to win a blue House and a blue Senate and a blue White House in 2024, the time should come that the American workers, let's say 3 or 4 big unions, agree to this. Insist upon a general strike to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. It will be a shorter strike the more people get involved with it. If there are accountants and lawyers and construction workers, road repair guys, landscaping gals, if there is just a swarm of unexpected Americans that join in, that strike is going to be much shorter and it's going to be much more fruitful. I would definitely recommend, if it is even conceivable that you could participate in a general strike, set aside striking resources now. Now, how serious is the likelihood of a general strike? I don't know of any group that conceivably, with a plan right now, is going to pull one off, is going to get one started. But remember, a big part of success is providing ourselves resources to work with. And it's a hell of a lot easier to achieve victory when you have your choice of resources. It's a hell of a lot easier, even if you're a small business owner, to get the minimum wage raised because your customers then will have more money to spend at your business. It's a hell of a lot easier if you have prepared. So, I would strongly recommend, in honor of this holiday, that you look at your finances, look at your own personal situation, and if possible, start making preparations for a general strike. And in addition, look for organizations. By the way, if there is one, just being a subscriber to this channel should be enough to let you know. But look for organizations that would announce when a general strike is on. Maybe set up a Google alert, so on and so forth. But in a capitalist society, a general strike is going to be the most effective way people can force legislation through. We talk about the Second Amendment all the time, like, oh, if the government ever goes too far, we got our guns. Drones exist, ladies and gentlemen. Your guns ain't gonna stop the government from doing nothing. But our ability to resist, our ability to use force against the government has evolved, just like everything else has evolved. Think of a general strike simply as the American people issuing sanctions against the American government, or really any people issuing sanctions against any government, to achieve an end. It is force. And by the way, it is a level of force, it's the only level of force really, that I recommend, I get behind. When a general strike comes, I think everybody who can be, should be ready to join, if it ever comes. If. It's unlikely, but if somebody does have the courage to do it, then we should absolutely join them. Set aside some supplies. Couple of cans of beans, I guess. Let's see what the Wicked community has to say. Ooh, Rustbox. When I search what you can do on YouTube, I don't find your channel. All right, fair enough. I'm going to start using the phrase what you can do in all of my descriptions. I was hoping the hashtag would take care of that a little bit. It's not. I'll work on that. You're right. But if you search WYCD, which is the channel handle, you should find our content. Thanks to the donation of time and energy from Wicked Foxy Dragon, we've sorted that out, and now we're expanding to get the actual phrase "what you can do" on there. Truth be told, I called the channel itself "What You Can Do" because I view that as an advertising thing. Like when you see this channel pop up in the comments other places, you immediately know what it's all about because it says "What You Can Do" right there. But I really didn't consider that there would be that YouTube wouldn't just make that turn up. It's like it's the title of the thing. Would have thought that by now, after 500 plus videos, would have thought it would be turning up, but it's not. Oh well. Okay, y'all, I didn't even do this on Salty Saturday because I wasn't sure, but it's or whenever I saw this last. But Biden's heckling of Fox is too good not to do. So forgive me. We're going to talk a little bit about Biden having jokes. So recently, President Biden demonstrated that he's got a tight five. He did a dinner wherein he heckled Fox for the Dominion suit, and it went about as well as you could hope. To the point, I mean, the jokes landed. The I believe my favorite was, I was going to play it. I don't have the clip. Oh, you know what? How about this? Yeah, the jokes landed, and my favorite of them was certainly, I'll just tell you, was certainly the line, NBC News owned by NBC Universal and Fox News owned by Dominion Voting Systems. Ooh. Ooh. Brutal. Even better, in my humble opinion, though, was Mehdi Hassan discussing it. Here's Mehdi talking about it. Brutal. Here we go.
Good evening, Ayman.
Mehdi, it's great to see you as always, my friend. I really enjoyed the commentary there on the White House Correspondents' Dinner last night. Unfortunately for me, I drew the short end of the stick and I actually had to cover it and report on it. I got to watch it, but you were there. Tell us a little bit about it. What was your big takeaway?
I mean, there was some good humor, Ayman, this year. Whatever you think of the politicians and the event itself, and people have mixed opinions, certainly there were some good gags, and not just from Roy Wood Jr., who was the comedian there specifically to entertain, but the president, Joe Biden, had some very good lines. He went for some very easy targets. I enjoyed his gags at Fox's expense, I'll admit it. I mean, I think we have a clip. Let's play a clip of Joe Biden on Fox.
Good.
The cable news networks are here tonight. MSNBC owned by NBC Universal. Fox News owned by Dominion Voting Systems. Last year, your favorite Fox News reporters were able to attend because they were fully vaccinated and boosted. This year, with that $787 million settlement, they're here because they couldn't say no to a free meal.
Ayman, what you didn't see in that clip, you saw some of the cutaways, people smiling and laughing. There were no cutaways to the Fox tables. And I happened to be on an MSNBC table that was right next to the Fox table where Suzanne Scott, Fox CEO, was sat with Kellyanne Conway, Bill Barr, and others. And it was stony-faced silence throughout. Every time Biden or Roy Wood made a gag about Fox, we all turned to look at the Fox table. And in fact, Susan Scott, who somehow survived, there was talk that Rupert Murdoch would throw her under the bus. Instead, they threw Tucker Carlson under the bus. She actually got up and walked out after the Biden comment. She didn't stay for the Roy Wood roast of her network. Funny that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of like the State of the Union where the Republicans never stand up when Joe Biden says something good, and the Democrats never stand up when the Republican president says something. But you know what was also a big takeaway for me, Mehdi, was, and I really appreciate the Correspondents' Dinner because it celebrates the First Amendment. It is incredible to hear that kind of roasting of powerful elite happen in real time. And you heard the president also talk about the importance of journalists. He talked about, the Wall Street Journal that's detained in Russia. He talked about how he was going to fight for the freedom of journalists in Iran and Russia and elsewhere, and that journalism is not a crime. And I thought that's great. That is a very important message to be delivered. What stood out to me, though, was it was a missed opportunity for him to renew calls for the accountability in the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh, a Palestinian-American journalist who was killed, by Israeli soldiers doing her job in the West Bank. It seems like the administration has kind of taken their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, trying to seek accountability. And I think we have a little bit of that last night. Listen.
Our message is this: journalism is not a crime. Evan and Austin should be released immediately, along with every other American held hostage or wrongfully detained abroad. This time last year, we were praying for you, Brittany, hoping you knew how hard all of us were fighting for your release. It's great to have you home.
Just for the record, the Brittany Griner imprisonment really grated on me. And I do want to stress how happy I am that she's back home. But I agree with these cats here. We have selective blindness in the U.S., and what we need is courage.
What I found interesting about that, Ayman, that clip with Joe Biden there, is that he singles out named people who we should all campaign for, including Evan in Russia, Austin in Syria, Brittany Griner, of course, not a journalist, but detained in Russia. And as you say, names that are missing. Shireen Abu Akleh, an American citizen, journalist killed by the Israelis. The FBI opened an investigation 6 months ago. Haven't heard anything on that. She was killed almost a year ago. Nothing from Biden on her. Not just Shireen Abu Akleh, Julian Assange, Eamon. Like, you can have whatever views you have of Julian Assange. I'm not a fan of him personally. But what he's being extradited or attempted to be extradited and prosecuted for is publishing things that we needed to know about war crimes in Iraq and elsewhere. So if you're going to say journalism is not a crime, you're going to have to talk about people like Shireen Abu Akleh in the Middle East, and you are going to have to talk about whether you like it or not people like Julian Assange.
You're going to have to celebrate the First Amendment rights of the press to be able to report on everything, even if we don't like where they're reporting, what they're reporting about, and who is reporting.
All in all, a fantastic event. Shannon Kalhoff says Roy and Joe crushed it. Yes. The anti-corporatist says you should do a little 5-second animation that makes fun of the NBC, the more you know, St. Paul, and what you can do. Oh, yes. Yes. The anti-corporatist says WYCD brings up the country station in Detroit. Oh. All right. I'm gonna have to keep that struggle going. I'm gonna beat that country station, GD it. In fact, dealing with country stations in Detroit has been the bane of my existence since road tripping days in Michigan. Y'all are right. I'm gonna have to outbrand them. Don't worry, I'll figure it out. But that was a fantastic correspondence dinner. You're right, Roy and Joe crushed it. And why are Democrats generally funnier? Well, because comedy speaks to truth. And of course, the Democrats have a natural advantage there. Not as much as progressives, but still. Oh, mercy me. Truly, I've been having just a blast. Even though the news is not, certainly not all pleasant stuff these days. It's distinctly positive. Yes, we're seeing all kinds of ugly things, but we're seeing things that we more or less knew about that are finally being brought to light. I can't stress enough what a big deal it is to see some of this stuff on, like, regular networks, or to see the Midas Touch network. Lord knows, I've got my issues with them. But to see them outperforming Fox online, oh my God, that's excellent. That's fantastic. Remember when they were the most watched stream on the internet? It was like when the Dominion suit settled. Oh, my word. Truly, that's a good sign. And that is happening because people are, to the horror of the right, waking up. They're getting woke. They are understanding what is happening. Finally. More of that talk. In fact, hell, let's start this recording. The popular phrase for understanding what's going on right now from the right is that every accusation is a confession. It's so true. That genuinely is a phenomenon that's going to be studied with great interest, because it has been the most telling way to understand what the right is up to. Case in point, how often do you hear right-wingers talk about the elites stealing from them, or the elites bullying them, or the elites forcing their way of life on others, or the elites, yada, yada, yada. The elites deciding how other people are going to live. Well, gosh, wouldn't it be embarrassing? Wouldn't it just? If it turns out that one of their appointed elites was doing exactly that. Hey, let's talk about Justice Clarence Thomas. Probably unrelated, right?
Ethical issues for Justice Clarence Thomas just get worse. Now, with the reporting that Harlan Crow's business was actually in front of the Supreme Court, which is a direct contradiction to what Justice Clarence Thomas said, that although he was accepting gifts, this was just a friend, and his friend had no business in front of the Supreme Court. My name is Dina Sayeghdal from Midas Touch Network. Let's break this down. So we all heard Justice Thomas's say that...
Damn it, she's got a good intro. Let me just say, for the record, that's all. That's my commentary.
That Harlan Crow didn't have business in front of the Supreme Court, but investigations show that the Harlan Crow holding company did have an appeal in front of the Supreme Court in 2004. An architecture firm was suing them, and ultimately...
Wait a minute. I do have one immature thing. Her name, her handle, I'll ruin the kayfabe of the stream here so you can see it. Her handle is Ask Dina Doll 1. You're telling me that there was already an Ask Dina Doll in existence? That's bizarre to me. The internet's a strange place, and I feel less bad now for the country station. Jesus.
The Supreme Court sided with the Harlan Crow holding company. Now, the holding company, according to them, only had a minority interest in the entity that it was affiliated with that was in front of the Supreme Court, that they didn't have control over that entity. But they don't say in the statement that they didn't have financial benefit from this company. It's quite common for corporations to have, minority stakes in other companies that they are affiliated with. They still financially benefit as a result of that minority stake, even if they don't control their subsidiary, essentially. And so even if they didn't control it, they certainly financially benefited from this fact that the Supreme Court sided with them instead of with this architecture firm. And Justice Thomas just said that Harlan Crow didn't have business in front of the Supreme Court. Even if you have a minority stake in the company, that's still business in front of the Supreme Court. Again, this just shows how much we need ethical standards for the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, Chief Justice Roberts has declined the Senate Judiciary Committee's invitation to come and talk about ethical standards for Supreme Court. He sent a letter instead laying out how they are basically self-monitoring.
Okay. So when I talk about using force against the U.S. government, it is for situations like this. Remember that force does not necessarily mean, the worst thing that you're imagining right now. No. In fact, most of the time, it takes the form of what do you call it? Civil disobedience. Making cops arrest you, essentially. Intentionally breaking the law, knowing that you're going to be arrested in order to protest an unjust law. Can also take the form of a strike, denying the United States your labor, services it relies on. One of the reasons a general strike is in the air right now is because of the essential workers being told they were, in fact, essential. If you were an essential worker, then you know how useful you were told you were turns out to be very different than how useful you actually are. And you discovered that even though you live in misery, apparently the whole country needs you. It's also for moments like this where open corruption is taking place, where the rules as they are written allow for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court simply to say, we don't need ethics. When something is that clownish, when something is that ridiculous, there's no point in having a reasonable discussion with this man. Every justice in the Supreme Court signed a document saying they don't need ethical guidelines. They don't need rules for operating, including the ones like that you might be supportive of. For example, Ketanji Brown Jackson. She signed it too. Look, imagine you're dividing up Halloween candy. You're a little kid again. You're dividing up your Halloween candy amongst your siblings. And one of them says, I have an idea. Everybody close your eyes for a second. Everybody close their eyes. And they grab everybody's pillowcase full of candy and just run out of the room. At that point, you go get mom and dad. At that point, you cut them out of the conversation for what's going to happen. And you agree that they're an unreasonable participant. They've just demonstrated that they're not seriously approaching how to handle this. Similarly, when you have a group of judges tell you that they don't require ethical guidelines, go to hell. They've just demonstrated that they're not a serious part of the conversation, and so we shouldn't include them in the conversation, but we should still have the conversation. How do you go above the Supreme Court? Well, you add to the Constitution. That's how. We need to get all blue in the House, the Senate, and the White House. But regardless, even if we fail at that, regardless, we should be pushing for an amendment that requires the Supreme Court to have, as Dina says there, a minimum standard of ethics that all other judges have to follow. I propose it should be higher. And if we want to negotiate about that, we can. But I'll tell you, the MAGA folks claim to not be that fond of the elites. I don't see how any American would honestly be okay with the Supreme Court having no guidelines, no ethics whatsoever. I think we could make this a bipartisan thing. So plan on in the near future a campaign of emails and calls insisting upon the Supreme Court having ethical guidelines. Let's let her finish her report here because she's crushing it.
This letter was signed by all 9 justices, unfortunately.
Boo.
So this is going to be an uphill battle for Congress to be able to pass a law, but I think they should, requiring that the Supreme Court have to, at the minimum, follow the ethical standards that other federal judges have to. But what do we think about Donald Trump and his recent statement saying that if he is reelected, he plans to nominate justice in the mold of specifically Justice Scalia and Justice Clarence Thomas? Certainly, he doesn't mind.
Obviously not. By the way, that doesn't mean that we can't get Trump supporters to support a change to rules that would affect Clarence Thomas. Not at all. Don't fall for that trap. I realize these people blindly follow Donald Trump a lot of the time. However, remember that we are able to appeal a lot of times when we're told that we're not. And we have an opportunity in this scandal to reach across the aisle, not to make friends, not to make permanent allies, but to simply make a pitch to a group of people that could help us either pass this thing or simply lower the resistance on their side to fighting us. Don't think of it like the need to convert. Sometimes all you need to do is get enough of their people uninterested in fighting that it's an easier battle for us. That is, I think, likely what we're looking at here. But it's good that Trump is choosing to side with Clarence Thomas, because Thomas is going to keep embarrassing him, and we got a whole lot of campaign before 24. Also, I can't stress enough, we have multiple charges coming down the pipe against Trump.
The fact of these unethical actions that are being revealed by Justice Thomas and the reporting about him.
My administration will again adopt rock-solid constitutional conservatives to be federal bench justices and judges, but in the mold of Antonin Scalia and Justice Clarence Thomas, who, by the way, right now is under siege by the radical left.
And interestingly enough, what's also kind of coming to light is Justice Scalia. He had something kind of similar happen to him. He went on a private jet along with then Vice President Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney, as vice president, had a case in front of the court, and there was this outcry of this being, again, unethical, an appearance of impropriety, that he went on the private jet. Interestingly, Justice Scalia, in defense of that, said that it was government money that was funding that private jet. He didn't even go as far as to be able to say that a private jet was just part of entertainment of a friend. Even Justice Scalia had to say that it was government funding of the private jet. But it seems like we're really just even in the beginning of the reporting around Harlan Crow and Justice Clarence Thomas, because documents have recently been leaked that Harlan Crow bought a passport for quite a large sum of money in the tax haven country of St. Kitts and St. Nevis. And what that means is that his financial transactions are kind of shielded by secrecy in those countries. And if he gave even more lavish gifts.
Just want to point out the beautiful historical rhyming, I guess. St. Kitts and St. Nevis, whatever, were notorious pirate havens back in the day. Yeah, during the Triangle slave trade and all that evil, those two colonies at the time were notorious for being shady havens, let's say.
To Justice Clarence Thomas that are even harder to discover because of this. And so the investigation into Harlan Crow and his dealings are just beginning. And how is that then going to be revealed about maybe more involvement in Justice Clarence Thomas and what he accepted, when he accepted it, and how he accepted it? Now, it looks like the Senate Finance Committee may be bringing Harlan Crow in to talk to him about his dealings. And in that conversation, we may find out more unethical and perhaps even illegal violations of Justice Clarence Thomas. I think that all of this is showing, again, how important it is for there to be ethical standards. The credibility of the Supreme Court is what gives legitimacy to the Supreme Court. And how can these 9 justices not abide by the same ethical guidelines that federal judges have to abide by? these kind of revelations, this appearance of impropriety, even if nothing actually happened, just even the appearance of impropriety, having this apparent conflict of interest, or this idea that you can maybe buy a Supreme Court justice is so undemocratic and so un-American that really we need to take congressional action in order to preserve the legitimacy and the credibility of our court.
Hey Midas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MidasTouch to keep up with the most important.
I mean, my word. Wholeheartedly agree that that the way to handle this at the level we have available to us now is, and thank you, Wicked Foxy Dragon. The way to handle this is to drag Harlan Crow in front of our legislators and have Harlan Crow and his non-immunity answer some questions. And long term, yeah, we do. It's plain and simple. We need a set of ethics that the Supreme Court is required to follow. And we need an enforcement mechanism wherein if they don't follow it, they get booted out. She's right to point out the appearance of impropriety. Why? Why is the appearance so important? Because there is a lot of gray areas. Because somebody might buy you a gift in January of a given year, and then find out in February of that year that they're gonna have a case that is likely to go in front of you, and the judge must then recuse themselves. And it might have been done in innocence. It might not have been a crime. But that doesn't matter. It's also important because the judge themselves might not realize. I think Clarence Thomas is full on corrupt. I think right-wing judges are every bit as corrupt as right-wing politicians. I think they cannot be trusted. I think they must be replaced when and where it is feasible. But it's plausible. Yeah, let's try this again. It's possible that something like this could happen in innocence, and the judge could be unaware of the fact that they are being more sympathetic to a person because of a gift they received in the past. There needs to be black and white rules that are just crystal clear and have consequences built into them. And any judge, any politician, anyone at all who resists such rules being put in place, they need to get kicked out, including every single member of the Supreme Court currently. Yeah. I would be willing to put that on the table. I would be willing to say we can get rid of every last one of these people and reappoint all of them. Hell, we can vote for all of them. I don't care how, but I'm fine with getting rid of them. I understand that the reason that letter was signed by all was probably some backroom dealing of some kind. Any judge that would engage in that, any judge that would engage in that kind of hostage taking doesn't have the understanding of ethics necessary to be a Supreme Court justice. So my recommendation, boot them all out. And at the very least, set up ethical standards that they must follow. We can pass laws to do that. It is going to be easier if we have honest politicians. We will only have honest politicians if we have a blue House, a blue Senate, and a blue White House in 2024. So get ready to make it happen and vote as left as you can in the primaries. Let's check out what the Wicked community has to say. Deanna Dean says, hi from Deanna in Australia. Hello. I really like your helpful and boundaried recommendations. Well, thank you so much. Wicked Foxy Dragon says he absolutely is. He didn't claim his wife's income because he didn't know he had to. Oof. Patrick Kibido says Jordy always sneaks his way in there. Yeah, Jordy. Oh, he's a sneaky one. I love it. Mars Falcon says shaming them means nothing. I think long term it does have a collective effect. Look, let's learn from our enemies here. Donald Trump really mastered the technique of just repeating something until people believe it. Well, believe it or not, you can do that with truth as well. Constantly shame Republicans. Think about how Republicans are known as the law and order party. How ridiculous is that? They have never been the law and order party. They have always been the corruption party. Literally, always. My whole life, they have been the corruption party. They have not been interested in law and order. The closest they've come to that is blindly defending police who are breaking the law. But they have always been the anti-law and the anti-order party. But why are they known as that? Because a bunch of people campaigned on it. If you want to change the way people view a group, then saturate pop culture. Just not even pop culture, just saturate culture at all levels that you can with your view of that group. It's been used for evil more than it's been used for good, but it can be used for good, and it should be. People should view Republicans as a bunch of diddlers, because they are. A bunch of criminals, because the Republican Party is currently, I hate to tell you all this, if you're in the U.S., this will be maybe news to you. If you're outside the U.S., I don't think it's really going to be. They're a bunch of criminals. It's a criminal organization. We should stress that they are corrupt. We should stress that they are only interested in helping the elite. We should stress that they are interested in stealing from Americans. All these things are true, and we should repeat them as often as we can so it saturates the public consciousness. Everything that is hated about the United States around the world can be attributed to Republicans for the most part, or at the very least, the conservative influence from the United States. It's a poisonous culture, and it is not really known as that in pop culture, and it should be. Way you do that is by consistently shaming them and heckling them, which they've earned. Zick says, every company I ever worked for had a clause in the paperwork that forbid taking gifts. Only retail I worked for was my last Walmart, and it was written no tips. Exactly. Yes. Well put. Because it's corruption. It means you will treat that person differently than you would treat others. It's an under-the-table deal. Zick says, and yes, they had been offered, but I have always declined. One's choice to accept or decline. Nothing like $500,000 vacations, granted. All right, fair enough. But first of all, kudos for being for having the honor to. That's the pain train coming for Clarence Thomas. Real long whistle. Okay. Kudos for having the honor to not take those tips. And also, when somebody's offering you $500,000 vacations, that's you're living a hell of a lot different than if you're working at Walmart. And I'll tell you, I've been in the latter position, and tips are a lot more tempting when you're trying to pay that rent. So kudos to you for resisting, for being ethical, and let's insist that our judiciary be held to the same standards that you were, Zix. Because I would rather we have a bunch of judges that act like you and that have your sense of justice than the clowns we currently have. We got one more thing here I want to look at. I think y'all are going to enjoy this. Probably help if I record, though. Well, we've been talking about victory after victory for the good guys in the public eye. And those victories are coming in the form of the bad guys finally being exposed to the public eye. A lot of this stuff isn't news to you. A lot of this stuff is to the watchers here. It's just going to be, small updates. But let me stress, all of the things I've been showing you have been already viewed in extraordinarily public forums by regular folks. Man, that is good. That is good news. The White House Correspondents' Dinner bringing up the Dominion suit. Oh. Mehdi Hassan putting it out on Twitter. A whole Reddit community dedicated just pointing out the hypocrisy of right-wingers who are daring to call trans people kitty diddlers when their community is just overflowing with people that do that, with that as a serious problem that should probably be addressed. I mean, we should genuinely look at the fact that there's a ton of church leaders that are just out there looking for an excuse to do this. But all of this is to say that the whole world is waking up to what poison the modern conservatives believe. It's really not even, it's not even accurate to call them conservatives. I don't know why I still do that. They're not. This political wing that believes in corruption as its guiding principle. Well, Fox, to tie into our first segment, recently lost the better part of $1 billion to Dominion. They're being sued for even more by another company. Let's look at how that's going to go for them. We have a little preview here.
Eric Connolly, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Nice to talk to you.
Were you
By the way, thanks to Lawrence Saint-Laurent for the suggestion.
Surprised when the Fox Dominion case settled?
I was not surprised that it settled. It looked like they were heading in that direction, and it's the kind of case and it's the kind of evidence that was coming out that I could not imagine Fox News and Fox Corporation wanting that to be aired more in public than it had already been aired.
What type of evidence do you think they were afraid of?
You saw a hint of it. So in our proceedings, you were able to get from Dominion some of the evidence, some of the emails, some of the text messages that painted a pretty damning picture of what was going on at Fox News and at Fox Corporation. When you get to the trial, everything gets rehashed again, and even more gets put on stage, and you have your witnesses having to come in live to testify. That, I suspect, was an unpleasant scenario for.
Absolutely. Can't wait to enjoy that a little bit more. I do want to bring in one thing. Deanna Dean, you said hello from Australia. I would love your take on what happened regarding gun laws in Australia. I'm talking about the cultural shift from your perspective, and I'm going to toss this to you. If you've got something, drop it in the comments. What happened with the culture that allowed Australia to get its gun problem under control during that mass shooting? And do you think Americans, who I think desperately need it right now, could take any lessons from that? Let me know what your thoughts are. I'll look for that on the other side of this.
Fox News and Fox Corp. So the settlement seemed very likely.
This is the statement you made after Fox settled the Dominion case. You said Dominion's litigation exposed some of the misconduct and damage caused by Fox's disinformation campaign. Smartmatic will expose the rest. What is the rest?
I think one of the most significant pieces that people have not paid enough attention to is the global damage that was done by this disinformation campaign. In the Dominion litigation, a lot of the focus was rightfully on the effect of this disinformation in the United States. And it absolutely sowed great distrust and a lot of animosity within the United States. It contributed to dividing the country here. But Smartmatic, it's a global enterprise. Smartmatic handles elections all over the world. And what Smartmatic has experienced is the effect that this disinformation had on the belief and trust in democracy all over the world. So one of the big differences between these two cases, and one of the things that Smartmatic will bring more to the light, is this isn't a problem just in the United States. This disinformation and how it undermined the trust in democracy had a real effect, a real negative effect on democracy and voting all over the world.
It is hard to overstate that. I've been waiting for somebody to go after Murdoch and his goons on a worldwide scale. I really, truly hope that lawsuits turn up in other countries against other Murdoch-owned businesses for this kind of thing. I think the template is being laid out, not just the template for how to win in court, but literally what to look for. These texts that have been pulled for one case, well, another case can request them as well, and so can another, and so can another. The court, generally speaking, around the world has a right to seek the truth. We should take advantage of that. This is a situation where if we all work together, we can all slay this dragon. And as many of us pine for more cinematic times, where slaying the dragon would involve couching a lance and charging across a grassy field, we are, sadly, in very uncinematic times, where it will involve tedious lawsuits. But nonetheless, the dragons burn in villages. We should team up. Around the world, there has got to be other parties that were harmed by Murdoch's corporations. Get in on this. Let's piggyback off the work done by other places that are chipping away at them. Good. We got the better part of $1 billion. Let's keep it going. Smartmatic's going at it as well. Great. Remember the News of the World? Remember that little rag run by Murdoch? How'd they get rid of him? An investigation. Bringing the truth to light. Ironically, the thing that will destroy this news conglomerate will be people learning the truth. That is done most often in a court of law. So if you are from not the United States, or if you're from the United States but you are aware of a company that might be able to sue Fox that isn't right now, now's a great time. They are weakened, and a lot of the work has been done for you already, like the work of multi-million-dollar, now billion-dollar companies. The work their lawyers did will make a regular country lawyer have an easier time of it. So really consider suing these monsters.
This is one of the most catastrophic events for a democracy and the belief in the integrity of elections that you could imagine.
Did Fox broadcast the same or similar lies as it did about Dominion, about Smartmatic, that it was engaged in a widespread conspiracy to steal the 2020 presidential...
So what Fox published was twofold. One, Smartmatic and Dominion conspired together to rig the election. That was one of the main messages that they were trying to convey. And the second main message was Dominion machines using Smartmatic's software rigged the election and switched votes. So when you look at the defamation that was front and center in the Dominion case, that is the exact same defamation that is front and center in the Smartmatic case, and the evidence that you saw in the Dominion case demonstrating that Fox knew that wasn't true is the exact same evidence for us.
A lot of internal Fox communications came out.
I gotta say it. I think somebody, I think one of this guy's buddies, bet him like $100 that he could say facts instead of Fox, or that he wouldn't say facts instead of Fox during this interview. Maddening.
Out during the Dominion trial, what did they show you about why Fox continued to promote the idea on air that the election was rigged?
It was an attempt to get their audience back. As was made public in what Dominion had filed, you saw a trend at Fox where after they made the Arizona call, they started to get pushback against their audience for making that call, which they got right, by the way, of course. But after that, there was a panic. And then after that panic about losing audience members, there was a switch in narrative where the company started to embrace this disinformation. And I think the Dominion filings and the evidence that Dominion put forward on that was very powerful. And obviously, that evidence is equally applicable for Smartmatic's case.
And for the sake of our audience, Fox was the first network in America to call the state of Arizona on election night for Joe Biden. And that was important because it stopped Trump's narrative that he was sweeping the election.
Correct. They got that right, at least.
One of the most important facts here is that Smartmatic played a very small role in the 2020 election. How significant is it that Fox ignored such a basic fact?
I have a situation of extraordinary recklessness on the part of a news organization. My client, Smartmatic, was in LA County. They provided election services during the 2020 election in LA County and LA County only. And yet somehow, under this narrative that Fox was spinning, we rigged a national election and we are switching votes in states and in jurisdictions where we weren't even participating. That is an extraordinary degree of recklessness. It takes about 1 minute on Google to figure out we weren't in any of those states that Fox was claiming we were switching votes in. So that is a whole other category of evidence that will come out in our case.
Will Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch be a part of your case?
Ooh, I'm going to keep y'all in suspense like I am, but I do want to say there's a channel called WTF Horror and Sci-Fi. I watch them sometimes to unwind on YouTube. This channel does horror and sci-fi stories. Unsurprisingly, it's a new animator, really just cutting their teeth, trying to get good. I'm sympathetic to that. And my point is, not just to plug this channel, although what the hell, why not? Head over, see if you like them. But my point is, man, they could call themselves a news channel, couldn't they? Really, anybody could just say, this is news, and then talk about anything at all. By our current definition, we honest to God, need to make there be obligations to the truth if you call yourself a news company. Just like you can't call yourself a cop when you're not a cop, to identify yourself falsely as a news company should come with harsher legal consequences than it does in the United States. Hey, if you're operating around the world and you don't have the Fox problem, tell us what is different about your country's setup. In the U.S., we need to know. We need a model to go off of, because the one we have clearly does not work.
So we have alleged claims against Fox Corporation as well as Fox News. And Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch, from our perspective, are front and center to the decision-making that was done at Fox Corporation that allowed and encouraged this type of disinformation. So we are obviously in an early stage of our litigation against Fox Corporation, but Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch are front and center for us.
How much do we know about their direct involvement?
There are definitely allegations that both Dominion has made and that Smartmatic has made that these two individuals were directing traffic here. And it's difficult to imagine something this sizable occurring at Fox News that was not getting the attention and the direction of the two principals for Fox Corporation.
Just for context, remember that Rupert Murdoch owned, what was it, like 130 papers around the world, or some obscene number, and all of them eventually supported the Iraq war. All of them. I think there was one holdout, but even that eventually caved. So yes, of course, Murdoch's, of course, the Murdochs have a hand in this. Obviously, I'm delighted to see they're being dragged in and are not going to be able to dodge responsibility here.
Calls your $2.7 billion US claim implausible. How do you reach such a large number when Smartmatic's role in the election was so small?
The damages in this case is a very simple exercise. What was the value of my company before this disinformation campaign took place? And what's the value of that company today as a result of that? And if you can think of something that is worse to say about an election technology company than they rig elections, and they are designed to rig election, if you can think of something worse to say about a company like that, I'd love to hear it. Boom. Because nothing can do more damage to a company like Smartmatic than what these defendants said.
When you first filed your case against Fox, it was in the immediate aftermath of January 6, and the divisiveness caused by the big lie was obvious everywhere in the US. Is it any less significant now, 2 years later?
I think it's just as important, and I think it's getting worse. I mean, the confidence in elections has probably never been lower. People's concerns about the security of their vote has never been higher. It's a toxic environment that we have right now, and it hasn't been remedied. You still see situations where people are running away from election technology, thinking that there's a risk that their vote won't be counted. And if you want your vote counted, that's the best way to have your voting run. And so there.
Fox is in serious trouble. Here's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that the shareholders get together and boot out the Murdochs and their 44% holdings. I don't know how plausible that is. I've never even been hired by a company that has, directly anyway, by a company that has so much corporate structure to it. But it seems to me like if I were a shareholder and my money was tied up in whether or not the company as a whole, there we are, loses money, I would insist that these people that are running it into the ground get kicked out. But the major victory here is not the money Fox will lose. That's great. That's a lovely little morsel we get. But it's not as important as the public knowledge that they are liars. That's the victory here. The fact that Fox News is not a news organization needs to get spread far and wide. And the fact that anything owned by the Murdochs cannot be trusted also needs to be spread far and wide. Let's see what the Wicked community has to say about this. But as the takeaway, just make sure everyone in your community understands the phrase Fox lies. Keep spreading that around. Every time you see a piece of news about what liars Fox are, what a lying, dishonest organization it is, share it on social media. Share it with your friends and family. Make sure the message gets out there. Fox lies. Let's see what you all have to say. Zix says, facts? Oh, Fox, yeah. There's some New England in there for certain. Yeah, in the Grand Rapids area, we even have an accent that's kind of like that in Michigan. I have family that does not say frog or fog. It's fag and frag. Dog is still dog, but for some reason, Accents are strange. Deanna Dean says, differences between the USA and Aussie attitudes to guns, probably lots, but we don't have the NRA running politicians and media here. So there's a lot less propaganda generating these intense fear and anger, outrage issues. Okay. Yeah, noted. I think dealing with the NRA as a dishonest organization is going to be important for sure. Dean Oldfield says, I can't believe that there are any shareholders. Agreed. Zix says, you'd be surprised then, Jake. Having worked for, I've been moved in the phone police. Let's see. Kicked out seems to be the best deal for the top guys. Fair enough. Yeah, they get that golden parachute. You should see the cost of failure. Ooh, gets the rest of us laid off. Painful. James Wall says, thank you, Jake. Yeah, well, you're welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us today. I got to let you down, though. It's the end of the show. If you enjoyed this stream, please consider giving your old pal Jake a like. It certainly helps. If you would like to see more, subscribe to this bad boy. We have a lot of fun. We stream every day but Sunday, and I love doing it for y'all. So do consider subscribing. Do consider liking. And hey, tell your friends about this. Share this where and when you can. Let's let it grow so that we have a large group that we can get to work in unison on special projects. There are times when the Wicked community is asked to do a mass write-in campaign. And guess what? We have been part of the solution already a couple of times to highlight a Wicked win that you guys earned quite recently, that Attorney General in Missouri website for reporting suspected trans Americans. That little piece of evil. That was knocked out by you and people doing what you were doing. Just flooding it with forms telling them exactly what we think of them, which is that they are evil. We've already had, this channel has been in existence for just 4 months. Just 4 months. And we have already had wins like that. Imagine if we get to the size of Vosh, if we can get this to the size of Majority Report, imagine the kind of stuff we're going to be able to pull off. I'm excited for it, baby. Ooh, yes. Let's get there. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you tomorrow. We're live every night at 9, except for Sunday. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you for joining me. This has been WYCD Wicked, by the way. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake.